parade on a garden in which the daughter, who is a sculptress, she makes various figures which combine various elements of human characteristics and characteristics of the animal world, and she combines them out of various materials, and she makes them very whimsical characters. And this is a collaboration with her father. So this is in a garden that he has in upstate New York. And so this is a collaboration between a father and a daughter. And so it's a very interesting article. I've kept it for a few years, this article. And this might be the time to talk about it over here. Let's go take a look at it now. So here we are. This is the father and the daughter, Leslie Fry and her father John. These are one of her sculptures. Charmed. The sculptor Leslie Fry, top right with her father John Fry, draws on fairy tales, mythology, and ruins for her pieces. Likewise from top right, Nest Builder. This is Nest Builder. Then the next one is Dreamer. Reclining Sphinx. This is Reclining Sphinx. And the watchful two-faced Sphinx. Let's take a look. It's around here. Okay, these are her sculptures. This is the garden that they have. So let's read the article, their story, by Joyce Wadler. Sewing Enchantment. A sculptor populates her father's Westchester grounds with chimerical creatures. By Joyce Wadler, Katona, New York. Strange creatures inhabit the garden made by John Fry and his sculptor daughter, Leslie. Magical beings that are part human, part animal, and part vegetable. So arresting and complex, they might be figures in a children's book. Here, though, the plot is known only to the artist. A lovely long braided lady arching protectively over the pool with the swollen body of a bird and the paws of a lion is one of the many sphinxes that have made this garden home. In the columns of a trellis, human heads peer out of the mouths of fish, as if in the process of being eaten, though they seem neither concerned nor surprised by this. The Jonahs, the artist calls these pieces. Tucked into a stone fence is a concrete figure molded from fruits and vegetables. Its body is a corn cob. Its sexuality is all embracing. For, as Ms. Fry shows, turning it about, it is not merely pregnant, but a hermaphrodite, part fruit, part veggie, pansexual. The romantic possibilities are staggering. Though other corncob creatures would probably be the most compatible dates. Do these creatures have stories or personalities? Quote, fairy tales, literature are definitely part of what gets me excited and fuels the work I do, Ms. Fry says. Like the Sphinx over the pool, she has a long mane of hair, the color of which, as one slips into this universe of human and plant crossbreeds, begins to resemble the deep red of a maple leaf in October, as if she were born of the forest. Mythology is a big influence on me, she adds. Also, ancient art. Sphinxes have been used as guardians. The one over the pool is definitely looking over everything. One of the biggest and first commissions I did was a park in Vermont, Parmaloo Park in Burlington, she says. It was a circular park, and I made these sphinxes in the park. They are on columns, and her braid continues down the column. Ms. Fry touches the nose of one of the sphinxes in her father's garden, which appears eroded at the tip. Quote, "It was a reject," she says. Quote, "It's an imperfect," Mr. Fry adds cheerfully. Plus, it fell into the pool once. I didn't have it on a stable enough base. The best view of it is when you are swimming, he says. I know Leslie didn't intend it, but it makes a lovely end piece for the pool. A father, a daughter, a collaborative garden, and it works beautifully. Though Ms. Fry lives in Winooski, Vermont, not far from Burlington, and her father is here in Westchester County, an hour north of Manhattan. In the terraced gardens behind Mr. Fry's house, that is inhabited by a dozen or more stone creatures, creeping flocks, surrounds a sphinx with shapely arms and lion's feet, languorously relaxing on top of what might be a miniature municipal building, a library, perhaps, or a train station, as if mythical creatures, unbeknownst to us, share space with commuters. On a nearby hill, a pale human face, framed by tiny white dutsa flowers and tall purple heliotrope, rises out of the earth as if being born or released. The gray of Ms. Fry's molded concrete statues echoes the gray stone in the sculpture garden, almost as if Mr. Fry muses they sprang from the natural world. There are a few distinct gardens here. The rose garden in the southwest corner of the property, planted mostly with David Austin English roses, a vegetable garden on the hill, an arbor of Concord grapes from which Mr. Fry's wife, Marley's makes a batch of jelly every year. The herb garden tucked behind the fish pond, but the most intriguing is the combination of sculpture and flowers and stone that Mr. Fry and his daughter have created. Mr. Fry is 81, his daughter just 57. They did not see much of each other when Ms. Fry was growing up. Since she was 3, when her parents divorced, Ms. Fry moved with her mother from Montreal, where they were living, to Vermont, and Mr. Fry moved to New York City, where he later married his present wife, the former Marley's Strillinger. Mr. Fry and her daughter were together only during the summer and on holidays. Still, they have many things in common: a love, even a need, for gardening, a feeling for the natural environment, a happy left-leaning bohemian streak. John Fry started skiing at age 6, and as an adult was the editor of a number of ski magazines. In the late 1980s, he started the winter outdoor living magazine, Snow Country, for the New York Times Company's magazine group, and later became the editor of a new magazine development for the Times Company's Sports Leisure Magazines group. He was an expert skier, though he underplays it, seeking out challenging and sometimes dangerous terrain: the Atlas Mountains, the Andes, the Bugaboos in British Columbia. He also served on environmental boards, including that of Riverkeeper, the group that worked to clean up the Hudson. He bought this 4-acre property overlooking the Cross River Reservoir in 1979 for about $65,000. His 3-bedroom home, which he completed in 1981 for between $160,000 and $180,000, was built as a passive solar house. Access to the outdoors was crucial. 4 glass doors open to the garden surrounding the house, and before breaking ground, 4 glass doors open to the garden surrounding the house. And before breaking ground, Mr. Fry built a balsa wood model from the architect's plans to ensure the quality of the views. From the beginning, he knew he had a challenge. What could he create behind the house to complete with the spectacular water views in front? Ms. Fry, meanwhile, had returned to Vermont after graduating from the University of Vermont and spending a few years in New York, where, for a time, she made sculptural fabric pieces she describes as, quote, lingerie for imaginary beings. Her work was included in a traveling exhibition called Empty Dress, Clothing as Surrogate in Recent Art in 1993. With a small inheritance she received from her father's mother, she bought a house in Winooski and began gardening. She also started making sculptures for her home, like the enormous concrete paws on the supports to her deck. Quote, once I became a homeowner, my work began to change, Ms. Fry says. Quote, because I wanted to make work for my home. A lot of it was in concrete, so it could be outside. I also wanted to make stuff for the environment. I love medieval art. I love ruins. I also started to get interested in public art, getting away from the fickleness of the art world and making things less precious, more available. Her public artwork includes Nest Builder, a 6-foot concrete column with a woman's head and a bird's body, which she created last year for the Seminole Garden Center in Tampa, Florida. A variation cast in bronze is in her father's garden. She also did a series of plant, animal, human figures called Wildlife Sculpture Search for the Boca Ciega Millennium Park in Seminole, Florida in 2007. Her pieces are often a mix of plaster and acrylic and plant materials, and many are half hidden. The sculptures in Boca Ciega Millennium Park include a woman with pine cone hair clinging sadly to a dead pine tree as if in mourning, and a straw-haired bird woman with a lower body that morphs into a nest held in human hands. Why is the woman clinging to the tree so sad, Ms. Fry is asked. Quote, it's a dead tree, she says. Quote, everything is going to hell in a handbasket. The pieces in the Boca Ciega project, she has said, were intended to deteriorate. Why? It was a low-budget project, Ms. Fry said. It was a low-budget project, Ms. Fry says. So she made the sculptures out of plaster, which is inexpensive. She made it out of plaster, which is inexpensive. It also breaks down over time. But the plaster eroding wasn't going to do anything to the soil, she continues. So it was okay. So the plaster eroding wasn't going to do anything to the soil, she continues, so it was okay. But from the second day, kids would come in at night and vandalize them. I repaired them, but they kept doing it. They were designed to erode when the sun, with the sun. They were designed to erode with the sun and the rain. But it is the human factor that is going to make them disappear more quickly. Erosion is not a problem in the Katona garden, where the works are concrete, ceramic, or bronze. But Ms. Fry and her father are in favor of allowing the pieces to change with the garden. A heel from one of the sculptured shoes near a waterfall has been chipped away. A reclining nude on the side of the house is overgrown with vines, into which she will recede more and more with summer. A nymph, perhaps conjured in a dream, disappearing again into the forest. Ms. Fry likes that. Quote, "It's a nice confluence of nature and art," she says. "I design things for vines to grow into. In the park in Vermont, with the sphinxes on the columns, I collaborated with the landscape artist so the vines would grow up the columns. Now vines completely cover some of the sphinxes, and people say, 'Doesn't it bother you?' I say, 'No. It just makes it more mysterious,'" she adds. "With my attraction to ruins and things being overgrown, it's just going with the course." So there we have the article. You got the article there? These are some of the artworks. That's Ms. Fry, Ms. Leslie Fry, and her father, John. John Fry's back garden top, that's this over here, had to compete with sweeping front yard views of a reservoir. From left, large sphinx. Watching over the pool, bed shoe. Builder, untitled, and a Jonah, a human peeking from a fish mouth. From far left, Leslie and John Fry. So that's Leslie and John Fry, the father and the daughter. The father has the garden. The daughter is the sculptress. So here we have Leslie and John Fry with one of her works of art. Here, this is another one of her pieces of art. So there we have that article, and about a remarkable collaboration between a father and a daughter. The daughter is an artist that's very good. 1 minute. The daughter is an artist, very good and very talented in doing her vision of art. And the father is also, they share a love for the environment and for art and what to do for the environment. And so that's this article, which I happen to have had for a long time. It was very interesting. Oh, okay. So thanks a lot for watching and viewing, and take care. Be well.